How are we today? You're just laughing at the. It really doesn't. It's really weird. Yeah. Yeah. It's what? Yeah. There we go. That's better. Okay. Well, what do we feel like we need today? I mean, I have a plan for us, but I can adjust it if we want to. Okay, well, that's the point of this class, is to get us back in the body. So I found a good definition of embodiment yesterday. Embodiment is the deep truths that we sense, feel, and honor within the body. I like that one. I feel like there's a lot of definitions of embodiment floating around right now. And if you like the Webster dictionary definition doesn't really actually capture what I think is happening culturally with that word. So thinking about that. So yeah, we've been kind of exploring in this class how we use embodiment practices to like resist or combat different systems of oppression. And we've been, the last few classes that we've had together, we've been talking about the different characteristics of white supremacy culture and how those live in our bodies. Maya, I think you were here when we talked about the sense of urgency. Mike, you might have been here when we talked about perfectionism. We were kind of going through these characteristics and their antidotes too. Like, how do we, if we recognize that we're having that lived experience in our body, how do we resist that? And what is the antidote to that characteristic? One of the antidotes that we talked about with sense of urgency, and I think it kind of applies across the board for these, is moving at what feels like a liberated or liberatory pace. Like, what does it feel like to move a little bit slower? What does liberated or liberatory pacing feel like to us in our bodies? And so I've been thinking about like this idea of like a liberatory pace for a while now, and I was reflecting on Adrienne Marie Brown. She's an author, an activist. She writes about social movements. She wrote the book Emergent Strategy and Pleasure Activism. And she says that when she's referring to like social movements, social justice movements, and any sort of like collective effort, that we need to be moving at the speed of trust, which means like moving at like a relational speed. How long does it take me to get to know you? And from that basis of trust, that's how we move forward. So that was sort of like floating around in my mind. And then just a couple of days ago, I was listening to a podcast of an astrologer that I really like, and she was referencing that same quote. And she was saying that moving at the speed of trust is moving at the speed of the earth. And I was just like, oh, that totally makes sense, right? Like, I trust the earth that after winter comes spring. It always happens. It happens every year. Like, I have that trust with earth that that's going to happen. And so I'm thinking about this, like moving at the pace, moving at a liberatory pace for me feels like it's not actually a linear trajectory. It's much more like sporadic. It's cyclical. It's moving with seasons. It's moving at the pace of earth and at the sort of changing seasons of earth. And that just is like, it's like this conversation we're just having right now, like, oh, my dog's begging for dinner at 4 o'clock. Well, sure she is. I should feed her at 4 o'clock. Like, that's what her body's asking for, you know? It's like, oh, you're tired at 4 because the sun's going down. And it's like, work should end when the sun goes down. And I'm thinking about like, okay, liberatory pacing and moving at the speed of trust, moving at the speed of the earth, and how anti-capitalist is that, right? Like, if we actually slowed down in the wintertime, if we actually stopped working when it started getting dark out, if we actually spent these dark, cold evenings in community like this and like connecting with each other and bringing warmth in the ways that we can, I just feels like that's what feels liberatory to me. That feels, and it feels so natural. It's almost silly saying it out loud. Like, obviously we should slow down in the winter time. That's what our ancestors have always done for millennia. Like, it's just, but I think it's worth mentioning because we don't actually behave that way most of the time. We just keep moving linearly and as fast as we can to make as much money, or as, you know, gather as much power as possible. And it doesn't feel sustainable or sort of in alignment with, I think, a lot of our values as a culture right now. So we are getting to we're in the darkest time of the year. The next 2 weeks are, you know, the longest nights and the shortest days, and we're coming up on solstice. And I'm just like thinking a lot about that. I'm thinking a lot about, with respect to yoga, you know, yoga is a tradition that is not my own ancestrally. And so I've been searching the last few years for my own ancestral practices, and so many of them are earth-based. And it's this time of year, this like deep, dark winter time, that is intended for retreat and reflection and integration and embodiment. Like, how do you take everything that you experienced throughout the year and integrate it into your body and feel it, so that you can, as the sun comes back at winter solstice and the days start getting longer, you can walk into the next solar year, you know, with some integrity. And so I'm thinking about this for our yoga practice tonight. And I think there's a way that each posture or movement that we do can be sort of experienced as a season, if that makes sense. Like, there's certain archetypes that we associate with each season. So like spring is often associated with like youthfulness and curiosity, and summer is like vitality and energy. And, you know, autumn and winter, we're getting into these like deep wisdom and sort of the depths of the soul. And I think there's a way, as we move through postures, I'm just going to play with this a little bit tonight. As we find different postures, I'll ask you to just sort of try to embody a posture as if it were summer, as if it was the summer of that posture or the winter of that posture, and just see what that feels like inside your body. And it might be a useful practice throughout the rest of the day. You're like, oh, it's the dead of December right now. Like, what does December feel like in my body? What does December feel like when I'm sitting at my desk? And I think that like actively rooting into nature and into cycles and the sporadic nature of life is one of the biggest things we can do, actually, to combat some of these bigger systems of oppression. We can really like root into our humanness in that way. So that was a little jumbled, but that's kind of where my mind has been at the last couple of weeks since we last met, and feels appropriate this time of year to remind myself and all of us how like beautiful this time of year really is, and what we're invited and called into do, the kind of work. So that's what I have for us this evening. As far as the movement goes, well, it'll be kind of a similar bell curve or circular practice that we normally do. So we'll start on our backs and then move to seated, then hands and knees, then up to some standing postures, and then back down to the ground. I do want to have us get some props set up. So we'll be starting on our backs, and I'm actually going to have you scoot up so that you're sort of close to the top of your mat, and then have a blanket or something. If you're wearing socks, that's probably just fine too. You just need something that can slide against the wood floor. So you can extend your legs out long or keep bottoms of the feet against the floor and lay back on your mat. And just let yourself start to drop into whatever experience your body is having right now. And just begin to kind of take in the space around you, the coolness of the air, the sound of music downstairs. And just start to let your awareness come across your entire body. So first starting at your feet, notice your toes, your ankles, and then let your awareness move up the length of your legs to your knees, and then to your hip creases and your pelvis. And see if you can really feel into both legs. It's almost like you're sort of slipping each leg on as if they were a pair of pants, like you're fully inhabiting each leg. You may feel called to find some deeper breath. And notice the parts of your torso that are making little adjustments to make room for deeper breath. You might notice how your rib cage is expanding a bit as you inhale. You might feel the collarbones lift and spread wide on the inhale as well. And then taking your mind to your shoulder sockets and down the length of each arm, feeling into the upper arm, the elbows, the forearms, your wrists, your hands, all 10 of your fingers. Starting to inhabit your hands as if you were, again, slipping on gloves, like you're just coming into the hand. Your awareness is fully expanding as you inhabit each hand, each arm, each shoulder. And then allowing yourself to feel your throat, your skull, your face, your mouth, your eyes. And now, having arrived, it's okay if you don't feel fully embodied yet, but we've started the process. So now that we've kind of come into our bodies, let's start to heel toe the feet out so they're a little bit wider, about as wide as your mat. And then we're just going to let the knees fall from one side to the other. So you can start by letting both knees go towards one side, and then bringing them up towards the ceiling, and then over to the other side. This can be a quick movement, or it can be a really slow movement. You might experiment with what it's like to initiate the movement from your hip socket versus your knees. Notice how that feels a little bit different. And then you can keep exploring. It might feel good to reach your arms up overhead and stretch them along the floor behind you, so that as you're letting your knees fall from one side to the other, you get this extra stretch, this extra length through each side body. You might liken this part of our practice to springtime. Think about the way a baby or a child stretches when they first wake up in the morning, stretching out their fingers and their toes. This can be kind of considered the youthfulness of spring that you find in this movement. It is the springtime of our practice. It is the initiatory phase of our practice tonight. So the next time that your knees come up towards the ceiling, you can pause there. And we're going to do a little warm up for the hamstrings, because we'll be getting into some hamstring stretches a little bit later, so I want to make sure that they're warm. This is why I have you sort of scooted towards the top of your mat. So what we're going to do is, as we inhale, push the feet into the ground. They can either be on your blanket or the socks against the wood. We're going to push the feet into the ground and lengthen the legs forward. So long legs, that'll be our inhale. And then the work is happening here. So as we exhale, we're going to dig the heels into the floor and drag the feet back towards your body. So you should feel the backs of your legs being a little bit warm as you do that. So we're going to inhale, stretch the legs long. And then as you exhale, dig the heels down and drag them back. And just do that several times. Move at your own pace. This shouldn't be like a super intense burning, but you should feel the backs of your legs just starting to warm up a little bit. And maybe do like 2 or 3 more times. And then when you're done with that, you can reach both of your feet up towards the ceiling and find long legs here. So you might draw your toes towards your face, stretch the heels up towards the sky. And then, yeah, you can kind of play with your feet a little bit here. So pointing and flexing the feet, spreading the toes. Again, think like how a baby moves, and see if you can feel sort of the curiosity of spring here. Like, you know, when a baby like first discovers that they have feet, and it's like the most amazing thing ever. See if you can be in awe of your feet in that way. Okay. So if it feels good here, you can draw your knees in towards your chest and give yourself a little hug. I invite you to bring some rocking motion in here, maybe side to side, or stretching the knees away from you and then back towards the chest again. Maybe finding a happy baby-like shape. And then our next posture together will just be a comfortable seated shape at the top of your mat. So you can rock and roll a couple times along the length of your spine if that would feel good for you, or you can just roll to one side and press up. So we're going to be in seated just for a few minutes. If you want to bring a blanket or bolster underneath your sit bones to have a little extra height, that might feel nice. And then we'll just take the fingertips down towards the floor on either side of the body and sit up nice and tall. So you're getting long from the tip of your tailbone all the way up to the top of your head. And then find just a little tuck to the chin so that the back of your neck is long. And we'll take an inhale there. And then exhaling, bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. And just feel into this stretch for a moment. Might feel good to kind of lengthen through the right fingertips, stretching them down towards the floor. If you want a little extra sensation, you can take your left arm and wrap it around the head and just like release the weight of that hand into your head. So you're not pulling, but you're just kind of softly releasing. And then we'll take the left fingertips to the left temple and gently guide your head back upright. And then we'll take that on the other side, starting with a big inhale, nice and tall. And exhaling, right ear towards right shoulder. Maybe stretching through your left fingertips. And then maybe bringing your right arm around this time to drape across your head. And then taking your right fingertips to the right temple, we're going to guide the head back upright. And then let's just roll the shoulders a few times. So you can reach them up towards your ears and then let them roll down the back. And then we'll reverse that up towards the ears and rolling forward. Okay, and let's take both fingers, step back down towards the floor, and we'll start to walk your left fingertips out to the left as you inhale, right arm up overhead and come into a nice big side stretch. And then see if you can root down through your right sit bone as you reach your right fingertips towards the windows. And then we'll inhale to come back upright. Exhale that arm down. We'll find that on the other side. So walking right fingertips out this time, inhaling left arm high, exhaling it over, rooting down through your left sit bone. And then inhaling to come back up. This time lift both arms up towards the ceiling so you get really tall through both side bodies. Exhale and relax your shoulders. And a nice big inhale here. As we exhale, we're going to twist to the left. So you can bring your left hand to the inside of your left leg. That might be enough, just so, or sorry, right hand to the inside of your right leg. I'm trying to mirror you here. And on your inhale, let's reach the arms back up towards the ceiling and unwind. And exhale to the other side, twisting to the right. And as you inhale, let's unwind, reach the arms up high overhead. And then exhale your hands right down in front of your body. And we're just going to walk the hands forward and let your heart spill forward over your legs. And then start to walk your hands back towards your legs. We're just going to switch which leg is forward here. So as you bring your torso upright, you can lean back slightly, switch the cross of your legs. And we'll take that same fold again, starting with a nice tall spine. And then on your exhale, you can crawl the hands forward, melting your heart down towards the floor. And then starting to walk the hands back towards your legs, long through your torso. We're coming to hands and knees next. So you might just grip the ground here and kind of roll up over the legs and coming back to that tabletop position. You may want to have a blanket under the knees here if you have sensitive kneecaps. We're just going to move through some cat-cows. So hands underneath your shoulders, knees under your hips. When you feel ready, you can let the inhale lift your head, lift your tailbone, widen through your collarbones. And then as you exhale, we'll push into the hands, round your spine, head and tail drop. And we'll just move back and forth like that. Take it at your own pace, your own rhythm, whatever feels liberatory to you. Our bodies are already so cyclical. I think about like the rhythm of breath, even how the inhale is like the spring, and then the retention of breath, the retention of all that energy is our summer. And then as we exhale, we find autumn, and the suspension of breath at the bottom of the exhale is our sort of the deep winter of our respiration. So even in the simple act of breathing, the inhales and exhales and those spaces in between, we find mirrors to earthly rhythms. And so when we talk about like connecting to earth and connecting and moving at the speed of trust, the speed of the earth, that can be as simple as just breathing, just noticing those 4 parts of breath. So let's start to work our way back to a neutral, long spine and tuck our toes under. And we're going to extend the right toes back behind us on the mat. And then pick up your right foot and take it over to the left side of your mat. So kind of crossing over here. That makes sense? Yep, that's it. And then we're going to look over the left hip. We're making kind of a C shape with the body. And then as you inhale, let's come back through center. You can bring your right knee back under the right hip, and we'll do that on the other side. So extending the left toes back behind you, and then picking up the left foot and taking it over to the right side of your mat. And then this time looking over your right hip. And then letting your inhale bring you back to tabletop. And then as you're ready, we'll tuck both toes under and stretch the hips up and back, finding our first downward facing dog. So wherever you're working in this down dog, I'm going to first invite you to find breath in this pose and see if you can feel your inhale expanding wide through your torso so that your rib cage actually expands from left to right, side to side. Yeah. Okay. So we're moving towards sort of the summer of our practice. We're going to start finding a little bit of warmth and vitality. So as we inhale, we're going to shift forward to plank pose. You can take this with knees lifted or knees down against the ground. Feel into the strength of your arms wherever you're working, and then puff up between your shoulder blades so that space reaches up towards the ceiling. Yeah, nice. And let's take an inhale there. And then exhale back, downward facing dog. Exhale all the way and find that deep winter of your breath. And then as your inhale arrives, the spring of your breath, come back forward, plank pose. Hold for the summer, find the strength. And then exhale through autumn back, downward facing dog. Pausing for winter, that space at the end of the exhale. And we'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling as you shift forward. Pause. Exhale, shift back. Pause. Inhale, shift forward. Pause. Exhale, shift back. And pause. Okay, let's take a full in-breath there. Exhale all the way. Good. Inhale, shift forward, plank pose. And then as you exhale, let's lower down onto our bellies. Okay. So I have a sort of cobra variation that I'm interested in exploring with you. I don't know if I've ever taught this, but it's something that I practice all the time. So we'll see how this goes. So the lower half of our body is going to be in our normal cobra shape. So we're going to push down through the tops of our feet, and we're going to reach the tailbone back. So we have a long, low spine. And then we're going to take wider hands than we normally would in cobra. So we're going to kind of raise up onto our fingertips like we've got little spider hands. This movement it's very snake-like, and it's going to involve a lot of sort of movement through the shoulders and the neck. And so the best way I can describe it is we're going to start by lifting our right shoulder and looking up over the right shoulder. And as you're lifting the right shoulder, the left shoulder is kind of dropping a little bit. Yeah, so that's our step one. And then we're going to lift both shoulders and look forward. Good, and then drop your right shoulder. So now right shoulder's down, left shoulder's up. We're going to look over left, and then we're going to drop both. So you might watch me do that once, so you kind of see it's sort of like a circular shape. I broke it down really slow, but it's like we're lifting up, coming through center, and moving down, coming through center. Does that make sense? Kind of? Okay. We're going to try it a couple ways, both directions. So let's start by lifting right shoulder, look right, and then come center, lift both shoulders, drop right shoulder, drop both shoulders. And let's move through that one more time. Lift your right shoulder, look right, both shoulders lift forward, right shoulder drops, look left, and then both shoulders drop. Good, okay, we're gonna reverse that direction. This time start by lifting your left shoulder, look left, lift both shoulders, click through center, drop left shoulder, and then come back through center, both shoulders drop. One more time that direction. Let's inhale, lift left shoulder, through center, drop left shoulder, and then drop. Good. Okay, and we'll take both hands underneath the shoulders now and press back to a child's pose. Just drop into the stillness of this for a moment. If you can breathe some space through your low back, sort of flaring your breath around your kidneys. And then as you feel ready, you can grip the mat with your fingertips, draw yourself up to tabletop. We'll tuck the toes under, reach the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And then gazing between our hands, we're gonna walk our feet forward and come to a standing forward fold. And I'm gonna have us use our blocks for this. So we'll take one block under each hand at the highest setting. And let's keep a fairly generous bend in the knees here so that the focus is more on finding length through the spine and less on finding length through the legs. So as we inhale, we're going to stretch the sternum forward, maybe lift the gaze, and then exhale as you fold. Let your whole upper body hang heavy. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling, halfway lift, sternum stretches forward, and then exhale and fold. And last time, inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Okay, and keeping the top of your body heavy, you can let your arms drop down towards the floor. We'll start to push into the feet and slowly unravel up to standing. You might kind of shimmy your shoulders side to side as you do this. And finding Tadasana or mountain pose, standing pose, come into the feet. You can kind of rock your weight forward towards the toes, backwards towards your heels, and then left and right into the outer edges of the feet. Good. We are going to move into some standing postures, so I'm going to take my socks off You're welcome to keep yours on if your feet are still chilly. Okay, so from here, let's push our feet down into the floor and then inhale, reach our arms out and up. Exhale, hinge at your hips as you fold forward. Keep that little bend in the knees, reach your sternum forward. Good, inhale, halfway lift. Exhale and fold. Okay, we're gonna step our right foot back to a low lunge. So you can bring your blocks to frame your feet and then reach the right foot back. You can bring the right knee all the way down to the ground. Good. And then, so finding some strength between your inner thighs here. So we're kind of engaging the inner thighs, engaging your legs, and then use that strength as you inhale and lift both arms. I'm kind of thinking about the strength of the pose being what we might consider the summer of the pose, or the embodiment of the archetype of summer. And then within that, there's this like subtlety of your breath moving. And I think of that as the autumn or the winter. Let's take an inhale there, reach your fingers tall. And then exhale and let your hands find those blocks. Okay, and then we're gonna push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, and start to walk the blocks back a little bit. We're gonna let the hips shift back towards the back heel. I'm gonna let my front toes peel away from the ground. And then here you can reach the sternum forward, and then maybe you let your head drop so the forehead comes down towards the knee or the shin. And then as we inhale, we're going to come back forward into that lunge. You can walk your blocks back forward. And we'll tuck the back toes under and lift the back knee. So finding a similar movement here, let's inhale and reach the sternum forward, widen your collarbones. And then as you exhale, push into the front foot, let your hips shift back in space. Your back heel can sink, and then the forehead might curl down towards your knee or your shin. We're going to move back and forth like that a few times, inhaling as you shift forward, opening up through your heart. And then exhaling as you shift back. Do that a few times, moving at your own pace. And I'll encourage you to really think about those 4 parts of your breath. So there's the inhale, the retention or the pause, and then the exhale and the suspension or the pause. And how can you sort of find those 4 parts as the guide, the cyclical guide through this movement? And the next time that you come forward, we're going to pause there. We're going to start setting up for warrior 2. So I'm going to let the back foot spin down so that the knife edge of the foot is about parallel to the back of the mat. And then I'm going to inhale and open the arms up wide. Good. So finding sort of the strength of the pose first, the summer of the pose. You might consider pushing your feet down into the mat and away from each other, as if you were gonna like rip the mat in half. See how that enlivens your legs. And then on the next inhale, let's drop the back arm towards the back leg and reach the front arm up towards the ceiling. And from here, push into your front leg and lengthen that leg. And we're going to start to tick-tock forward into triangle pose. So as you reach your front arm forward, the crease in your hip crease is going to deepen. Reach, reach, reach. I'm going to grab a block. So you've got a block down there by your front foot. And then from here, we'll inhale and reach the right arm up overhead. And then leading with that lifted arm, we're going to reach that arm up towards the ceiling and let that draw us out of the pose back to warrior 2. Full in-breath there. And as you exhale, cartwheel your arms around to frame your front foot. You can set your blocks aside, and I'm going to have a step back to downward facing dog. You can also move back to child's pose, or if you want to flow through a vinyasa, you're welcome to do that too. Just think of this as like your choice, choose your own adventure, transition time before we move into the other side. And we'll start to meet up again at the front of the mat. So when you're ready, you can take a bend in your knees, look forward between your hands, and then walk your feet forward to a standing forward fold. And using your blocks if you'd like, we'll inhale for a halfway lift. And then exhale to fold. Preparing to come into that low lunge, we're going to step the left foot back this time. And then we'll let the blocks frame that front foot. The back knee can come down towards the floor. Find some strength in your legs first. So I like to think about sort of almost as if I was going to zip my legs together. There's like a zipping action through the inner thighs, and that's the strength that allows me to inhale and lift my arms. And then can you find the winter or the subtlety of this pose? Thinking about how your breath moves within your body in this pose, how the pieces of your body gently shift to accommodate your breath. Let's take one more inhale here. And then as you exhale, you can take your hands down to your blocks. And we're going to start to shift our hips back in space, lengthen through the front leg, and maybe let the toes of the front foot come away from the ground. And then perhaps it's just your sternum reaching forward, or maybe your whole head is curling down towards your front shin. And then nice and easy, we'll start to rock back forward to our lunge, tucking the back toes under and then lifting the back knee. And moving through some cat-cow lunges here. So this time as we inhale, we'll widen the collarbones, find that little cobra shape through the upper back. And then as you exhale, push into the front foot, lengthen that leg and let your hips slide back in space. Your inhale will come and shift you back forward. And then the exhale will guide you back. And just move through that several times, moving at your own pace, whatever feels like a liberatory pace to you right now. And considering all parts of your breath and the role they play in the movement. And then the next time that you shift forward to your lunge, we'll pause there. We'll start to set up for warrior two. So we're going to spin the back heel down so that it's parallel with the back of the mat. And then inhale as we sweep the arms wide. As before, finding the strength of your pose first, you might imagine pressing your feet down into the floor and away from each other and see how that energizes your legs. And then from that strength of the legs, there's all this extra space to find the subtlety and the breath through your upper body. And then let's take an inhale here. And as you exhale, we're going to reverse warrior. Let the back hand drop down towards the back leg and stretch the front arm up overhead. And then pushing into the front foot, we're going to lengthen that leg and start to hinge forward towards triangle pose. Reach, 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 and then maybe your front hand finds a block or your shin. The other arm stretches up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to use that floating hand to pull us out of the pose. So it's going to reach up towards the ceiling and guide us back to warrior two. One last inhale here. Then exhaling, we'll cartwheel the arms around to frame your front foot. Pivot the back foot so the heel is high. And then we're going to work our way back to either down dog or child's pose. You can take a vinyasa transition if that would feel good tonight. And then in your own time, we'll start to make our way to a standing forward fold. There's no rush to get there. We're all in different variations of a rest right now, so just taking your time. And from this forward fold, let's find our blocks again, bring them underneath our hands. And then we're just going to bend the left knee a little deeper than the right. So the left knee is going to bend. You might find the right leg straightening. It's kind of like the hips get a little off center here. And then it might feel good to push down through the left hand and inhale as you reach the right arm towards the ceiling. And then nice and easy, we're going to lower that floating hand. Bring your knees back to parallel each other. And we'll try that on the other side. So this time bending your right knee a little deeper than your left. And then inhaling as you lift the left arm. And then gently coming back through center, standing forward fold. And let's start to stack the body again. So unraveling nice and slow up to standing, stacking one vertebra at a time, maybe shaking the shoulders back and forth as you rise. Okay. So I'm going to move my blanket out of the way. I just have one more pretty brief standing sequence for us before we head back down towards the mat. You'll just want your blocks for this, and they're going to frame our front foot here. So we're going to start by stepping back to warrior one, and let's step our right foot back first. So in warrior one, we want our feet to be like they're on railroad tracks rather than like a tightrope. So there's a little bit of space between the feet and our hips can shine straight forward. Yeah. Cool. Okay. And then from here, we'll inhale, lift your arms. And I'm just going to invite you, if it feels like you can maintain balance and close your eyes, you're welcome to do that, or you might just let your eyes kind of rest on one of these candles. See if you can experience this pose as its winter version. You could imagine the winter of warrior one. When I think about that, I think about sort of where I might soften, where there might be subtlety. I think winter is often associated with wind, right? So when I think of wind as it pertains to the body, I think of our breath. How does the breath impact this position? The winter warrior, the gentle warrior. And then we're going to take this into a fold. So I'm going to have you push into the front foot and lengthen that leg. I'm going to bring my hands to my low back. You might also try finding opposite elbows or opposite wrists or forearms behind your back. We're just going to start with a nice tall spine, a little bend in that front knee so you're not locking the joint. And we're going to begin by hinging forward, reaching your sternum forward. Reach, reach, reach. And then I notice that as I reach forward, my left hip wants to slide up. So I'm going to actively keep pushing the left hip back, right hip forward as I reach my sternum forward. And then if there's space, you might let your fingertips find your blocks. And then it might feel good to let your head hang heavy over your front leg. And then we're going to take a little bend into the front knee and push into the front foot as we rise back up. Good. And we'll step both feet together at the top of your mat. Standing in Tadasana for just a moment to integrate, thinking about the sort of deep integration time of this time of year. And just doing a little body scan. So bringing your attention down to the bottoms of your feet. And noticing if one foot feels different than the other. Feeling into each leg, inhabiting each leg. Does one leg feel different than the other? And feeling fullness of your breath as you breathe forward into your front body and backwards into your back body simultaneously. Okay, so let's try warrior one on the other side. When you feel ready for it, you can reach your left foot back this time. Again, we're looking for a little bit of space between the legs. So feet like you're on railroad tracks, hips shining relatively forward. And then from there, we inhale and lift the arms. And since the invitation here is for like the winter version of this pose, you might notice how active your arms are. Are they being like summer arms? Maybe winter arms would be a little wider. Maybe there's more space through the shoulders, allowing your shoulder blades to settle down your back. They might even find a cactus shape. And then finding the subtlety of the pose through your breath. You might notice if you can feel your breath down towards your pelvis, your low back. And preparing for that big stretch, I'm going to bring my hands to my low back. You might grab for opposite elbows, wrists, or forearms. And then we're going to push into the front leg, lengthen that leg. And as we start to hinge forward, we're reaching the sternum forward, and we're going to keep driving the right hip back, left hip forward. Maybe eventually the blocks become accessible and you can reach your fingertips down for them. It's possible that it would feel good to let your head hang heavy here. And then taking a little bend in your front knee, we're going to push into the front foot to come back upright. And then step both feet together at the top of your mat for Tadasana. And with your curious mind, investigating and integrating the last two postures. So we're feeling the floor through our feet, inhabiting each leg, almost as if you were putting on your legs like a pair of pants. allowing the tailbone to dip down just a bit as the pubic bone reaches up. Tips of the shoulder blades draw down, shoulders and neck relax. And then from here, we'll push down through the feet. Inhale as you reach your arms out and up. And then exhale as you swan dive forward, forward fold. Finding your blocks, inhale for a halfway lift. And exhale and fold. Plant your hands, step both feet back. You can come into down dog, child's pose, or flow through one final vinyasa before we head down to the mat. Okay, so when you are ready, let's come to a seated position. We're going to set up for a twist here. I'm going to sit on a blanket just so I have a little lift under my pelvis. That might feel good for you too. Good. And then I'm going to have us reach, let's start with the right leg forward. So stretching that leg long and strong. And then I'm going to cross the left leg over that leg. So I'm just going to hold this bent leg in kind of close. And I find it's helpful to close my eyes as I think about this. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to invite you to drop your attention down into your pelvis and see if you can let your left hip crease get a little bit heavier. And feel that your low back is spacious. And from that heaviness through the left hip and the spaciousness of your low back, then you can inhale and find a little length through your spine. And then maybe on an exhale, you start to twist your torso towards the left. And you can kind of use your arms to guide that twist. So perhaps wrapping the arms a little tighter around the bent leg. You may find that your left arm wants to come behind you for a little support. And that support can help you keep the upper back long, but again, try to keep the low back spacious. And then let your inhale unwind you as you come back through center. I'm going to use my hands to guide me out of this. I'm going to lift the bent leg up and let it extend long to meet the other. And just shake out both the knees for a moment. And then we'll do that on the other side. So this time keeping our left leg straight. So we're going to bring the right leg in and cross it over. And then dropping in first before we twist. So maybe that means closing the eyes or just focusing your gaze on one of the candles. And this time I invite you to release weight down through your right hip. So the right hip crease is getting heavier. It's sinking down towards your mat. And as you find deep inhales, you're creating some extra space through the low belly and the low back. And from there, we'll find an inhale. And an exhale as we twist this time to the right. And then maybe your right fingertips come back behind you, providing a little support. And we'll let the inhale bring us back around through center. Using your hands to support you, we'll lift the bent leg, reach it long to meet the other, and shake out the knees. Okay. So we're starting to wind down. I have a few restorative postures for us. We can think of this as the winter of the whole practice tonight. For our first posture, you might want to block, and then we're going to stay seated on a blanket, so you can stay where you are here. We're coming into just a butterfly pose. If you know that you like to fold all the way forward, you're welcome to do that. I actually like to use 2 blocks for this, so I kind of stack the first one on its low setting, the second one on its highest setting, and I'm going to let my forehead come down to that pile of blocks. We're just going to be here for maybe 2 minutes, not too long. And you can experiment with how close you want to bring your heels in towards your body. I like to keep mine a little bit more spacious when I'm doing these more restorative longer holds, but that's totally up to you. When you feel ready to move forward, you can start to reach your sternum forward and let the forehead come down to whatever props you might be using. It can be really useful in a restorative practice to just let yourself kind of check out and disconnect and completely relax. For our purposes today, for this posture, I'm going to invite you to try to really stay present. And it's just for a minute or so, but I'll just invite you to really pay attention to those 4 parts of your breath. And they don't have to be exaggerated. It doesn't have to be very deep breath, but it still has those very distinct 4 parts. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. And as we're in this sort of rounded, bent over shape, the space that the breath has to travel is going to be moving towards the back body. The space where the lungs have room to expand is toward the back ribs, toward the kidneys. So before we come all the way up out of this posture, first bring your attention down toward your sit bones and feel them grounding into the earth. And then you can use your hands to support you as you start to stack 1 vertebra at a time. Bring your torso back upright. Okay. So we're going to find sort of the opposite shape this time, a low supported fish pose. I'm going to show you it first with blocks. You might try with a blanket instead. Sometimes the blocks feel a little too abrasive on the shoulder blades, so you can see what feels best for you. I'm going to bring the first block to its lowest setting. That's where my shoulder blades are going to rest. And then the second block is going to be on this medium setting, and that's going to catch my head. So as we come to lie down, you might have to kind of use your fingertips to get that first block in just the right spot. You want it to feel supportive. If it feels like it's like pinching or poking in any way, we want to move it around a bit so it feels comfortable. You also might find that the second block needs to be on a higher setting. If this feels like too much opening for the neck, it may feel better to bring the second block on the high setting. If the blocks aren't working for you, the alternative is to use a folded up blanket or rolled up blanket under the shoulder blades instead. Or if you just need some extra cushion, you can drape a blanket over the block. And if none of those things are working, third option is to let the bolster come underneath your spine. So we have a few minutes to be here. If at any point it becomes uncomfortable and you want to make a change or move out of it, you have all the power to do that. I think at first it might feel nice to come into the fullness of your breath here. But we're starting to move towards that deep integration time of the practice, and it shouldn't feel like too much effort. It shouldn't feel like effort at all, really. This is the time to really just receive. So we're going to start to make our way out of this posture. And we're going to be coming to a side lying posture next. So it might feel good just to kind of roll towards one side and shift the blocks out from underneath of you. The next two postures are meant to just be very cozy. I will show you how I like to practice this, but you might use your props in a different way. So I'm starting on my right side, and I'm going to take a bolster and line it up with my right leg and let my left leg just kind of drape across that bolster. And then I'm going to use a block to support my head. Probably I would use a blanket to cover up with if I were you, just for ultimate coziness. But if you want extra padding, you might put a blanket on top of your block. And we're going to have about 3 minutes on each side. So this is meant to just be very relaxing, very cozy. The kind of cozy you want to be in deep December. We've got a few minutes in this shape. Over the next couple of exhales, I'll invite you to let that top leg get heavier and heavier. Oftentimes we're gripping around that hip and we don't even realize it. So see if over the next several exhales, you can really release any tension through your hips, your glutes, your thighs. And let the bolster receive the full weight of that top leg. You don't have to do any holding here. So there's no rush, but we're going to start to take this same posture over to the other side. In your own time and in your own way, you can make your way over onto the other side, shifting your props. As you're cozying up to this side, a gentle reminder to release tension through your top hip and let the bolster receive the full weight of that top leg. Our next pose together is our last pose of the practice. It's our Shavasana. If you're feeling super comfortable and you just want to stay right where you are for the remainder of our time together, you're welcome to do that. If you want to come onto your back, it might feel nice to slide the bolster underneath your knees, cozy up with a blanket. And just let your breath come easy here, staying in this state of reception. As we enjoy these last few moments of practice together, I wanted to share an excerpt from Catherine May's book called Wintering. She writes, "Transformation is the business of winter. In Gaelic mythology, the hag deity known as Cailleach takes human form at Samhain to rule the winter months, bringing with her winds and wild weather. Her very steps change the land. The mountains of Scotland were formed when she dropped rocks from her basket, and she carries a hammer for forming valleys. A touch of her staff is enough to freeze the ground. Yet the Cailleach is thought to be the mother of the gods, the gruff, cold originator of all things. Her reign lasts only until the beginning of May, when the goddess Breed takes over and Cailleach turns to stone. In some versions of the mythology, Cailleach and Breed are actually two faces of the same goddess, youth and vitality for summer, age and wisdom for winter. As we so often find in ancient folklore, Cailleach offers us a cyclical metaphor for life, one in which the energies of spring arrive again and again, nurtured by the deep retreat of winter. We are no longer accustomed to thinking in this way. Instead, we are in the habit of imagining our lives to be linear, a long march from birth to death in which we mass our power only to surrender them again, all the while slowly losing our youthful beauty. But this is a brutal untruth. Life meanders like a path through the woods. We have seasons when we flourish and seasons when the leaves fall from us, revealing our bare bones. Given time, they will grow again. I'll invite you now to start deepening your breath. And you can let that deep breath turn into some smaller movements through your fingers and your toes. Perhaps letting your head rock from side to side. If you feel called to stretch in other ways, you can do that too. Maybe reaching your arms up overhead or drawing your knees towards your chest. And then taking your time, we'll start making our way back to a seated position. To close out our practice, I'll invite you to bring your hands anywhere that feels authentic or meaningful to you. You can take them to your heart center or prayer pose. And for just a moment, be with your breath, your wind, your inner winter. As always, I bow in deep gratitude to the lineage of yoga and all of my teachers in somatics, breathwork, meditation. And I bow to the indigenous communities that have stewarded this land for generations and continue to do so today. And I bow to each of you. Thank you so much for being here. I wish you a transformative winter season. And let's close out our practice together with just a couple of breaths. You can start by exhaling all the way. And take a full inhale. Exhale completely. And do that one more time, a full inhale. Exhale all the way. Thank you so much. Have a good night.